interrupting the current neo-colonial cricketism to bring you Behind the Woodshed. This is Crickitude Busting episode BTWRLM406. Still here, still doing the same thing. Thank you over at Spreaker, Slowburn678 for your comment. You are welcome. Thank you very much for tuning in there. We have a couple of places left. There's a couple of people that on YouTube are being hammered and aren't being able to post. So anybody that is posting the broadcast or relaying it, I appreciate all that. Particular Walrus, you're actually doing, the viewers you have Walrus at BitChute, you really have a lot of people. I just dropped in to see actually just how you were. You were still there, so that was cool. I thought that was neat, and then noticed that there's quite a following there, better than I have on my BitChute. So that's cool. Like I said, getting the word out to me is more important. And the point about that is not to hear me talk, it's to try and explain. As you hear me say, we have to get these people that are hurting us behind the woodshed and teach them that lesson they're supposed to learn. And we would have thought that we didn't need to do that, but that's really not how this thing was working. We was told wrong, folks. And so that's where we come from. We were told wrong, and there was people it moved this place. Actually, a lot of, before we even got here, most of us got here, they altered this place a bit, and then that was reality. And so we haven't really we are really been removed from what really is supposed to be. And then there's it's like, I guess the term now is gaslighting. The whole system becomes one big gaslight, and it becomes very difficult for certainly people like me to try and show the pathways that are there. And then anybody who runs up against the wall where those people that are presenting the spaghetti western of our life, the illusion, are there to control it. And so it's not quite so simple, but as I keep saying, look at history. You're not free to let it go if you have any idea that you are in control of your own life, and or there are documents that we can see, which the reason why they're important, these documents are black and white and written. It's the same thing the courts purportedly use to establish the facts. So there's not something that can be doubted what you're doing. Now, that those things can be misinterpreted terribly is another problem. In fact, we just got notice of that happening, and it reminds me to tell you, you really have to look at your terrain and what you're going after. And it's not just because you say it works. You have to really work it through. There's really obstructions. This is not just opinion or just fanciful ideas. There's an obstruction to your way of life, and it's changing. As I told you, the news is happening. If you haven't paid attention, I told you the transition. We got a reprieve with Trump for a while. He didn't end it, so it was going to continue. As soon as his reign was over, it was coming back with a vengeance. And this thing I've been talking about is absolutely coming back with that vengeance. And they're not thinking about anything more than getting everything back into place. But some ideas came to me about what I was going to talk about this week as I was looking at some things. And normally I don't have a title for the broadcast until after I do it, and then I just make it up in the last moment of what the content was, what I felt comes to mind. But this week I had 3 ideas, whether they'll make the title or whether they'll make a subheading over the links. I came to mind relative to what we're watching. It's peaceful. One of the titles that I looked at is "Peaceful Transition to Tyranny," which is what it seems that's going on, because there's really nobody resisting. Notwithstanding what happened on the 6th of January, there's nothing really going on beyond that. Or another thing came to my mind, which I'll kind of mention here as I move this through, and some other thoughts relative to an email that Gary L. sent me, an article of somebody up in Canuckistan. So those of you up there that want to team up with someone up in your neck of the woods, maybe you want to listen in on this. But rise of the criminalcrats on steroids came to mind. And I know these words are kind of odd, but with these terms, I'm trying to get people to think, well, that's odd, but maybe trigger something. Yeah, get triggered. Everyone gets triggered now. Ideas. These are bureaucracies that are building up around your neck, and they end up being what you have to deal with first when you don't realize it, or it doesn't seem that you can get to, and the fundamental organic things that was supposed to be secured to you. And this is one of the techniques that's being used and is always used. A lot of you, without getting off a trail here, a lot of you will see that when they mischaracterize your name, style it differently. And I'm not going to get off on too much of that, but that styling is known in federal law, in bankruptcy code, which bankruptcy code is the Congress actually runs that whole. They wrap that bankruptcy as something exclusive to the federal government, and so it dictates to the states that style. And so we found a rule long time ago that actually explained all this, which was when I started to realize what was going on relative to this stylization problem, which diminishes you. And then they use that diminishment. You can even, as we've been hearing, we've done it a few times over the years, you can even challenge this, and they'll tell you that they're going to honor what that status is, and yet they will, when orders come out, they're not capable. The jurisdiction that you're looking at and dealing with is not capable of doing things organically. It's a subversion. It's a substitution. And so, again, this is a bunch of stuff in our face that we have to deal with, and why I'm telling you, there's a whole different way to approach this, and it's not going to be an easy thing. What you're not going to see too much is the bloodshed of the Civil War that you're in, or the international occupation that happened long ago, not just this current stuff. But looking at this, the way this is working, and I told you back in 2008 or 9, I think it was 2008 when that financial destruction happened, and I keep mentioning it recently because it's all coming back because of the financial destruction of your life. You'll even see a headline now, the economic destruction, the sovereignty, coming out of an interesting group of people that I told you, and I'll telegraph who they were, the status or the type of people they are, the race, if you will, with the DAPL. I told you those people are being used. They don't know it. And so here now we see that they're being used in another story here many years later. But looking at this condition and looking at the overthrow and looking how it came on, and I told you, look at what happened. They pledge allegiance to a democracy, which is mob rule. You didn't even realize it, and the generals didn't step up to stop that and save the republic. Meant that the republic was essentially dead if we hadn't thought about it before. It's pretty much stopped. And then the guy coming in was going to re-implement all the foreign impositions on us, which we can claim, we can put it in name because they put it in name. It's called sustainable development. Now, people may roll their eyes, may not understand that and all. It doesn't matter. It's coming in, and it's going to wreak havoc on your life fast. And there's really nothing to stop it now. And we'll see a little bit when I get there. But I wanted to point out how they do this shift. They'll tell you they'll do things right up front, and it symbolizes other things, or it gets your mind into something and focused on something. It's like a magic trick. You watch the magician's left hand, and with his right hand, he's preparing the wonder of the magic that you didn't see the sleight of hand. Kind of came to my mind this week, where was the concocted story about Trump interfering with a peaceful transition of power a cover for the real transition of power Biden fast-tracked on his first day in office. If you look what happened in the news, we'll get to some of this. Boy, I told you, he didn't take any time. He just started rolling it out. When someone does that, then we're also hearing that maybe he doesn't even know what he's signing, because I would believe that, because this is not something of an insightful take. This is an agenda running, and it's running at full steam. And so it doesn't matter. The guy doesn't have to know what he's doing. And so that made a lot of sense. He can be senile. It doesn't matter. In fact, the more senile, likely, the better. But not to disparage that part. Was this a cover? Was the overt peaceful transition of power concocted story actually covering the real transition of power that was coming in? And the reason why I'm saying that is really not a question. I think it absolutely was. It has all the parallel earmarks. And so we get focused on the Trumpster, and he gets put in, and everyone says now it's the new normal. We can relax now. Totally what they wanted, and totally what we can't use. But so immediately restoring the foreign invasion, as he does, the foreign invasion I was talking to you about before, we would get a reprieve from, conducted by domestic enemies. So the domestic enemies are bringing in this foreign invasion. And again, it has lots of characteristics and names you can put on it. And to me, that's irrelevant to what you're looking at their deed, don't you? Libra Code keeps working here. And it's because we're in an occupation or we're in a military takeover. It keeps working because the deed is only defined through that. So the domestic enemies are re-engaging the political millstones here. As you see, the very first day of climate change and rehiring of its current operator, the WHO.
No, not the rock group, not the owl, as I say, but the corrupt World Health Organization, which is it. And these investigators are aiding and abetting the fraud, instituting things like mandatory masks for seasonal flu symptoms on federal property. This is what this guy brought in under cover of undoing Trump's stuff, was to impose the oppression immediately and now expand it on federal property. This was astonishing to me because and I still haven't got we got too much things to read yet, but I wanted to go back. They even spoke of in the stories, and we'll get to those, about federal land actually being required to wear a mask. Now, how the COVID knows how to hide behind the trees in federal land in the open is quite astonishing. But this, again, it shows you the stupidity behind it. And then the idea behind that was, who is the president to rule this when he hasn't even declared his own emergency because he can't identify the contagious principle? And how does he do that in the state? There's concurrent jurisdiction on public land. How does he do that where the exclusive jurisdiction for health is in the state? So we have all these power grabs going on, and no one's stopping. No one even brings a question. And on those few that do, either get beat down pretty quick, and there's no support to protect everybody with that. The first guy that goes in, or the first woman that goes in, doesn't have any real support. And so they get slammed, and everyone else, all the sheep back off real quick. And anyway, it's a dynamic going on. So they continue to press this thing. There's no substance behind it, no substantiation, no way to get substantiation. Violating jurisdictions left and right, which tells you there's no borders. And this is what the Sustainable Development Global Condition is. There is no borders. Anybody without borders, doctors without borders, fairies without borders, unicorns without borders, whatever, mothers without borders, whatever the cause without borders, that is an agent of this change of your ray of life that protected property and your rights and secured to you these things. The agents of change of which are already in place, and why you've, over the last 40, 50 years, anybody engaging has seen just turn your back to it because you realize there's just nothing there. And there isn't, but that's the problem. It needs to be brought out more clearly. Anyway, that's the way I approach it. I don't know how about turning my back to it because it's just going to come down and run you over. So there's supposed to be a jurisdictional limitation, and there isn't. And then you have the specter of the president having jurisdiction over the federal employees, like a corporation. And is there going to be any pushback from those employees? That's unlikely. Why? Because they get paid, right? The government people get paid as long as they shut up, as long as they comply, as long as they kumbaya, right? So what we're seeing the speed up, the aiding and abetting of this fraud, the medical holodomor, where the famine that's going to be imposed here is upon every aspect of your life, every aspect that you'll allow or you tolerate. And this is the problem. We have a little bit of quick discussion in the chat. I'm not seeing between the ignorance and the apathy, I don't see much encouragement from the populations. Doesn't mean that there's not little places here and there, and we're going to get to some of that today, that are trying to come back and coming back. But they're certainly not in the United States, which is very interesting as well. That so-called beacon. I said they put that beacon out here, and they're going to make it solid and complete. They're going to board it up, and we're not going to get it because no one wants to really step up and put themselves out a bit to start the process of stepping back. And this week I'm learning, as I've been telling you, start simple and move out. Try not to take a bigger bite than you need to, and you certainly have to understand the terrain. So learn the battlefield you're going to be in, and simple is better here. And so I wanted to remind you to look at, if you're going to come to do this thing and you start to make a record, look for the easiest and the most solid one first, and it'll probably go better. And as I see this, I'm learning more about how we're going to refine that as the occupier starts to ignore. As I told you, and I forget to finish the point about the 28, I told you fraud, when they made toxic debt money, or as money, they made fraud viable as currency, and that we would likely not see fraud recognized afterwards. And that's happening. That's one of the weird, if I can say terrible, the bad notices we got to this week, that fraud is not regarded. And so that makes me think we have to make even a more special effort, and we have to simplify even further. It may be even smaller steps that we're going to need to go. you're going to hear in the news when I get to that today that someone who was attacked was able to defend themselves. And that's another problem. They've set it up so they don't want to hear about you if you're not suffering the consequence, which is also not right either, when the capability of the threat and the harm is already going on. They won't even recognize that they're adversely affecting you. And so this becomes part of the equation. But, so as you come to terms with the fact that all this did unfold as you've been told behind the woodshed here, is there going to be a peaceful transition to tyranny, or are you going to help stop it peacefully, at least to begin the internationally recognized process? And what am I talking about? We have, and there's a couple of people that talk to me that have been interested in this. It's going back to that alter and abolish thing. If you look at history, that we are given the examples of how that is. There's a process. Okay? And if we don't recognize that, whatever cause we're going to do in the future to try and protect ourselves from this will not be recognized, and plausibly and correctly so, because we will have acted out instead of within our power. And again, this week, I was at a marvel of the continuity of the information that seems to appear to focus, aid the focus in the next subject matter of importance for you that I do on the broadcast. Each week, I try to pull themes of ideas together. That's what the broadcaster is. It's these themes and blocks of information. I try to put headings that kind of encapsulate the idea. There's multiple meanings behind some of this stuff. Some of it's a little bit more well thought out in the moment as I put it together than other things. But it's an attempt to try and convey multiple types of ideas to people. Why? Again, thanks for Grimner to allow it, because otherwise I don't have much of a place. And I'm looking out, there's not much of a place. It's just the way this is also working out, part of the attack. But I read an article forwarded to me by Gary L., as I mentioned before, and an author, Kevin Arsenault, who wrote in an article, Eyes to See, Ears to Hear. How many times have you heard that behind Woodshed, folks? Yeah, he writes, and this is where I get the feeling of there's people in minds that come to this after looking at something, you come to the same conclusion, you're looking at the same stinking abyss, you're going to discuss this all the same way. The words might be slightly different, but the absolute truth and the bottom line of the whole thing is the same. You're standing shoulder to shoulder looking at the stinking abyss that's issuing out and destroying everything around it. And you're looking at that thing, what am I can do with that? And yet you can't really walk away either. He also wrote of this ubiquitous tyranny, of those that he quotes saying, promoting an elaborate global plan aiming to undermine democracy and rob us of our freedom. That's how he phrased that. Remember, this is in Canuckistan, so I took special interest in that statement. What did I just tell you about the United States, where everyone's pleading allegiance to democracy? It occurred to me that those doubting the wide-ranging types of government that are being destroyed, the USA lost the republic with its so-called representatives pledging allegiance to mob rule. In other words, military people know mob rule is, by definition, called democracy. And what most people call democracy is not well understood. And yet, here we have an author in Prince Edward Island, PEI, as you'll see it in the story, in his writing, which he writes very well. He says he's toned it down for us to read, which is pretty cool. I don't know how well he writes otherwise, but he was conveying his idea relatively clearly in this manner. So that was a good thing to see. But even from Prince Edward Island and Canuckistan, where he's written his letter to local officials demanding the evidence of the cause for their purported health crisis, and in the absence of the evidence is now, by his statement in the article, is moving to some form of legal action. And he's saying the very same invasion through domestic agents is about to strip his country of democracy. And I want you to understand what I saw in this. He's saying he's going to be stripped of democracy. I said your United States moved from a republic into democracy. So he anticipates not even being able to live under mob rule in Canuckistan. Those of you that are up there, take note. The USA representatives pledge allegiance to that. They're not But in Canada, Canuckistan, you're not going to even have mob rule, is how the transition is going already for Canuckistan. He's not going to even live under the mob rule that's going to be at least moved, the United States will be moved into. If you think mob rule is at the bottom, no, it gets worse. It's going to get worse and worse. Now, he's writing about, quote, something in his writings, he said, something that is entirely based on deceit, promoting an elaborate global plan aiming to undermine democracy and rob us of our freedom, is essentially what I've said, except that we have a republic. And so he's coming to the same stinking abyss and recognizing it's the same in somewhere else than where it is in the United States. And then he goes on to observe in his writing that the plan underway to transition power from national governments throughout the world, especially from countries in the West with democratic governments, in a bid to establish a globally centralized new seat of unelected power for the world, is what is going on, is no different than what you're seeing everywhere. And so this is not confined. His observations, I don't know the man. Again, this is just an article he wrote as it's sent to me by Gary L. And here we have a totally different world, if you will, experiencing the very same thing, but one step down already. So this unelected power of the world, this globally centralized new seat, is the goals of the unity-centric global criminalcrats. Now we're back to one of the titles I thought about. These autocrats, these technocrats, these bureaucrats on steroids. Unity-centric. And I want you to remember that word unity, because look what came out within hours of the new the president, the inaugural oath-taking of the president-elect. And I don't know what happened to Trump, right? We were talking about that last week. What happened to his answer? Anyway, unity. Well, you remember this? The unity thing I talked to you about all about in 2015 relative to the Pope, and in 2010, I think, again. Unity is a central core, and I talked to it periodically throughout the years. Unity is the call of these criminalcrats. And yet it's like, what's the term they use also? Inclusion. Inclusion is the monopolization of your society, and then there is no distinction and no difference, and you're under one rule. And anybody that doesn't have the mind of that and behavior of that one unity rule will be outed. You will be conformed, whether that's by your will or to the terrain in the ground as you become compost. See, not even freedom of mob rule survives in all this thing, in unity. The mob rule won't be mob rule. And you're going to see, there's news, all of it this week, coming down to tell you that. No current government type or people is safe against this tyranny about to befall all peoples. Peoples, I'm going to use the word peoples because we're talking now the tribes as well in the United States. I don't know why really I make these distinctions. I don't know why, but we have to. We're all affected. We're all adversely affected, and after a while, you start finding that out. What most people don't understand. You work with an occupier, and pretty soon they'll take you out because you don't serve a function for them. So all the peoples are subject to this, and you're seeing that with COVID. I told you this was the defining point for us. And this unity-centric global criminalcrats, condition is worse than any Marx or other ism. This is kind of beyond. I've told you this before. Nothing new. But it comes out, I'm talking about it now because some other authors coming up and seeing, relative to this COVID, this is more of a global plan. We have the proof in the words of those that are wielding it through the WHO, not the Rock Group of the Hour, but the World Health Organization, saying, in fact, COVID was a political maneuver, not a health crisis. And the politics, and you find out that's climate change as well. It's a political overthrow. And it focuses on economics. So watch your economics happening now. Watch how all of a sudden the news will be coming out to tell you how much debt this place is in and how fast it's going to start to collapse it. Maybe get ready with your real wheelbarrows. I don't know.
So this is good. This whole thing, I'm trying to think, how do I describe? This is like the green religion idea. It's a philosophy. It's a political philosophy foisted upon people that have, in the United States at least, every power to stop it. It's going to but this whole thing moving beyond Marx-isms or other isms or ists is going to be beyond philosophical, the irreparable harm planned for you, and the beginning of which you already tolerate for a year now. You're just seeing the tip of this. This now, when you look back at what happened, they were saying, well, Trump they were going to do a transition of power problem. He wasn't. In all the news, and he said he wasn't. But they brought it up and made it a big deal. And yet, what came in and altered the transition of power happened through Biden. So this mirrors that faux transition of power obstruction threat foisted upon the public blaming Trump to advance that actual unholy power ascending to the office of the President of the United States. It's the power behind the man. The fraud under the pretense of unity, just like the Pope, as I pointed out late 2015, I think it was, September, I think it was. We talked about all that stuff. And because it all came together to show you that's exactly how this is building. And it never stopped. It never stopped. So this is the realm of the party of criminocrats. Forget your Republican, your Democrat, forget all that. Well, they're there. They're make an illusion for you, the false front. They're there to make a good show. But what's working behind the scenes is just like I told you, it's just a man with a hand signing bills that could care less, good or bad, or to figure out the new strategy that someone before him may have built in that may have been preserved. No, just swept it all off and went right to the old thing that I can tell you we were fighting for Jefferson Mining District as hard as we could with relative to the methods of the avenues of communication that we had at the time. So what's a little mining district going to do? Typically, I was the only one writing the authorship of the paper, which was agreed to by the chairman and the whole assembly, and then that was all generated by people miners out in the field getting reports back that we were addressing. And there's just too much work for one little organization like that. And so it's going to take, just thinking about all the work that's really involved, and if no one steps up, what's in the future is not looking very good. Kevin Arsenault goes on to say in his broader, we're heading rapidly for a great reset. Where most of the discussion of his writing, great writing, is explanation there up there in a small island, exactly what I've been telling you. They're experiencing it there. I have to depart from him here, whether he says we're heading rapidly for a great reset. So because this awareness is late, as if we're moving, we have more time to prepare, as if you've heard me say for all the time I've been broadcasting, we've been in other terms in a great reset since 9/11. It's not coming. It's here. It's been here. Which I further explained coming into 2020, right as we broke in from 2019, would be entering the next closing phase, save for how you all responded to it, as I pointed all this out, of what was started back at 9/11. So they were waiting for you to see how you respond. You didn't. You did what you did, and they were able to move into Operation Hindsight 2020, as I explained, and now we're here. So it's not that it's coming. The reset's here. The reset for the United States has happened. Now you're going to live the consequences. So time is now to respond to this overthrow. Since 2 decades ago, folks. Not something yet heading rapidly on us. And so it's not so much that I just depart from his sentiment. I agree with Kevin Arsenault. What I want us to understand is that we're in it, folks. This is happening already. That's another trick. Will look like a reset's coming when you're not responding to the one that's already reset and haven't been.
And I think I further said that the next phase of what is upon us would change form to one of medical martial law. Now, a lot of people scoff at that, but you're seeing what's going on. You look, you knows them when you see them, folks. You're not able to move about the country, all due to a medical crisis. And I told you that this type of a thing would be the worst society could face to try and stop it because of the prerogatives given to governments. And I don't know how anybody else can look out and not see how that power is wielded absolutely at this point. So you looked at you looked at the political overthrow reset, but you didn't recognize more than, oh, there's the medical thing coming on, not realizing it's tied to the actual overthrow and how you've locked yourself down. You don't see the one prior, and you're not really seeing this one apparently because there's no response to it. Again, this oppression is unfolding and there's no response. So watching that come on, I've been tasking myself with this medical thing now. This has been a year ago or so, with figuring out how this next phase would be accomplished and working out what I could ascertain, make certain would be the best way to confront and redress the oppression. And I'm on record for all this. So this is not, I'm not just coming up with this up like an afterthought. This was we could anticipate this if we were just going to be vigilant on our rights, but we're not. A little bit dismayed, but anyway, so I'm just all these kind of thoughts are going through my mind as I'm talking here. I believe, though, I can't know for sure. I don't go looking around. I first established the hashtag "There is no test" to demarcate a way forward for anyone interested in how to proceed. Well, this relates to the inability, as we look at how we attack this thing, the Achilles heels essentially. This relates to the inability of officials to comply with the law requiring that determination for an infectious agent. The very thing they're trying to say exists was the very thing you have to go to law to defeat. As I told you before, I've learned, this adjunct policy nonsense is defeated in the first instance by imposing the law that was not followed or not saved and followed. And again, just because you assert it doesn't mean that it's so, but you're on a foundation that's impossible in some regard, except for the sheer force of soldiers that are the minions that are attacking. That the law is going to be maintained by you. The adjunct policy is the only thing they hold, and it can't throw you off the foundation. So there is no test spoke to the inability for the government having the duty to find an infectious agent to be able to. Without a test, that can't be done. So that, to me, was the Achilles heel. That was where we're going to start to focus. And some of you have. I've been talking strictly to that all the time, although there's many different ways to get at it. And then that's going to be a test to find out what is the sentiment through this occupation that's over us that wants to promote this against us. How are we going to find the pathway that's the clearest and the cleanest? So, as I said, we use the law regardless of what you might think about it, and no, there's no law. There is. If there wasn't, we would be actually destroyed quicker. That's the only thing I can show you and tell you. We use the law because you are not going to argue with a moron, as we saw that meme. Moron to better spellers among us. And this was indicative of another problem with us, the ignorance of our people. Neither will you be able to argue with the criminocrat bent on stealing your life or anything in it. You're not going to argue with a thief. If they think they have the power and the advantage, they're going to steal from you. Now, Biden's call for unity, this unity-centric foreign imposition, he immediately came out. His call for unity and people is a facial treason, as far as I can tell, to the republic requiring not a unity government, but a tripartite government of vigilant and jealous branches bound to law, not the caprice of men, as they are fallen all. there's some wisdom in why we were set up where we got here, why it was set up this way. Wasn't perfect, but it was at the moment the best that the people that got together could make. So what you heard in this cover-up, the transition of power that they blame on Trump, that the actual transition of power is going on. You can hear this in Biden. You heard from Biden at the inauguration. What you heard of him speaking to unity in the context that he was doing was a treason. And I didn't see any of the military generals stop it. So I know that it's treason because what he was talking about relative to unity relates back to sustainable development. And I've got a court case of default judgment inequity to prove it against the government and the political parties both, and the Bar Association defaulting in that matter of JMD versus Kitzhaber 2013, which disappeared right after it happened, the record of which has been altered a bit. You have to read through the lines to find out that a judge tried to dismiss that after the default, and he claimed, though I'm not sure that they're going to put the record, he claimed that he had no jurisdiction to do so, which we already knew. That's what the challenge was. He was also a bar member, which is a party to that case. And so you watch the Bar Association doing what the treason that they do under the color of lawful government. So this is not new to me. This is just able to see it and say that that's what they're going to do. And what he declared, what is in that default, is that when you promote this unity, sustainable development, climate change, whatever you want, all in that lawsuit, you are committing treason to the Republican form of representative government and everything that you stood for. That's all. I don't know what more to say. So when we heard how many people were there, the National Guard, the military, how many people showed up after the fact, no less, if there was anything. When they heard that, when they heard this treason, none of the 25,000 plus National Guard did anything to defend the Republic from the enemies, foreign and domestic, upon the hearing of that treasonous call to unity. It sounds like a simple word, folks, but it's power packed. It's not innocuous. This is not friendly. In fact, the military outnumbered the attendees about 10 to 1, did you hear? The only number I could find was about 2,000 people showed up to listen to the inauguration. And to cover up the fact that no one's listened to the guy and no one actually supported him, they blamed again what? Our best friend, COVID. And there was 10 times more military there than there was people attending the transition of power to unity. A unity government, not a tripartite government, a unity government under the commander-in-chief. And for those having the eyes to see, that's what has been ruling the United States of America for a very long time, as I've been telling you. You saw the symbol, the evidence of what's the real truth. As deluded inexplicably, immediately claimed that with Biden, peace once again rules. The people saying just, oh, he's there, oh, we're safe, oh, we can relax, it's now the normal we need. I don't understand this. Deluded people have to be saying this, inexplicably. And immediately they responded that peace was once again ruling and that we're back to normal. Folks, have you looked out and seen the unity rainbows all over your area? Appeared from the sky magically from every vista in America to proclaim the lasting peace and kumbaya yet? Have you seen that, folks, since he's proclaimed it? I don't know about you. Well, it's kind of snowing right now, but I haven't seen a unity rainbow just because he showed up. No, I saw a cover of a transition of power that was not serving the Republic at all. I'm thinking about all the. We sit back and watch, actually because of the dearth of proper action toward a proper result and the deafening silence consequent this truth. I, with ears to hear, can still hear crickets. the author, again, Kevin Arsenault, as he tells you he's unburdening himself. He unburdens himself to you in his article. Is something for you to know and do. You need to listen to what he's saying. This is universal. He's starting to take action. He tells you to write, essentially he does write the letter demanding the evidence for the demonstrable exigency claimed by the relevant officials under the name COVID-19. You have to do that because the higher guy, the premier, the governor of your state, is sitting in a presumption of prerogative power. The courts are not questioning that. And you're going to have to show that they have not brought, the thing that comes to me to say to you is that they have not demonstrated a non-fraudulent exigency to allow them the prerogative power they're wielding. And so the letter, he wrote the letter. So if he never, I don't know that he listens to me. He came, as I tell you, when you look in the stinking abyss, you respond in the same way. You're responding to the same thing you see. It doesn't matter where you come from in the world. When you look at anything that's this bad, you're going to come to the truth, and it looks the same, and you respond the same. He wrote a letter. I don't know what he doesn't tell me the impetus for why he wrote that letter, but he wrote the letter he needed to write. So he says, do this. He's doing this. He's apparently going to go to a lawsuit with it. We'll see. I hope he's going in the right direction. But that begins to free ourselves from that tyranny foisted upon us by the domestic enemies. Folks, this is not a drill. However, Event 2201 is characterized by the same token, the lawless transition to the power was accomplished as a false witness that Trump was a threat to it. And no one noticed. Well, except it seems by the guy behind the Woodshed, right? I mean, because I'm still hearing crickets. What's that meme? That meme, change my mind? Yeah, do that. Change my mind on this, please. Otherwise, restore that republic. We've got to restore this way of life back. And it doesn't really matter about that guy in Washington. He's telling you where they're going with it, and fast. I know it sounds trite, but you're going to have to restore to you your inalienable rights. The antecedent ones, not the inalienable ones that are given to you by statute, which is actually what the government wants to try and do to you, give you inalienable political rights that they can condition. And they do that, as I talked earlier, how they're doing it. They do it by character assassination. They stylize you on the paperwork that they recognize to be someone who's a debtor, at least a debtor, if not a corporate entity, subject to the created state, subject to the officials of that state. They don't want to recognize you as the posterity, the people. And they're going to go to the ends of hell to make sure that you're not going to rise to heaven, essentially, and deny that to you. So it's up to you to secure to you the unalienable rights, not secure you through the UN unholy alliance. The unholy alliance that's going on. You have to stop. Each one of us. I also want to highlight, as I was thinking, Kevin Arnault, again, the author of this, Eyes to See, Ears to Hear. He has a little subtext. They have eyes to see, but do not see, and ears to hear, but do not hear, for they are a rebellious people. It is a perfect statement here relative to you think you're rebellious, and you're actually falling into the sin, if you will. Your rebellion is against what it should be. It's the wrong rebellion. It creates and allows the unholy UN Holy Alliance. But Kevin Arnault also points out the global trickle-down hierarchy guiding this. And if you go to TN Traffic Ticket US, Tools Report, and download the petition against the governor, go to the demand section and you'll see how the rules were promulgated to allow such a direct foreign control through what is called appropriate medical experts. And that that demand there requires that the hierarchical connection, also identified in Prince Edward Island by Kevin Arnault, that severs that connection he identifies in the hierarchy. And it's through the reformation part of the rule that was promulgated to bring it compliant and consistent with the legislature's delegation of power, that the infectious agent and contagious principle would be determined locally, not by some foreign fraudster like the WHO or the CDC or anybody else. In other words, they have to have actual real sick people based on the startings of a report. You'll see this in your statute from a doctor who we found out have to go to Portugal to find out the doctor has the exclusive jurisdiction over what goes on with that patient. And so there's a complete divestment of the organized hierarchy that allows this, that Kevin Arnault, and I'm pronouncing it that, I'm hoping the French is correct, kind of N-A-U-L-T, reminds me of Renault, and they're found out later in my young life, but you don't pronounce the alt, so it's Renault. At any rate, so that's what's going on here. But he identifies this hierarchical connection foreign to state, the local, just like everywhere else. Again, this is a plan, and we got to get beyond arguing about that, and we're going to have to decide, well, if this is the plan and they mean it's really this much harm, which is all written what it'll be, what are we going to do about it? So the point here is that Kevin Arnault identified another consistency with this global assault against us, not just against the house of the people, as you saw, but the organic establishment securing to you your life, liberty, and property, euphemistically known as happiness, and that there is a way to stop it if you only will. This is what I've been talking about for a long time now. Or there we go. I guess there's a track breaks over here. Or, as importantly, people miss this, but I say this and people just I see so many comments coughing at it, but it's so important. Making the record that there is no way to stop this, even more importantly, to establish further effort is futile. This is what we're talking about now coming into, and this relates to a quick conversation we had in the chat, RLM chat. Like, can we get people to come together and do this? How are we going to pull this off? Relative to the right to alter and abolish, it requires a certain way. So you have to establish that your efforts are futile. You just can't say they are. You have to establish that they are. So it takes an intellect applied to something to start to show the world, because this is what happens historically. The world could not even come against the rightness of the action when the tyrant was shown. And we have it better now because we have this better foundation, organic principles that were supposed to secure us, that the so-called trustees, in the form of the officials of the usurped government, were supposed to keep. Not you, them. You have to keep them now because they've been wrested from you by them. But we see this process, very important process. Well, we're going to have to transition through the same way because this is just a time immemorial process in all of mankind, throughout history of his interaction. Started to be more refined where we get to those who wrote the Declaration of Independence. And if you look carefully at what they did, I'm not talking about all the words they used. I'm talking about the process. They have provided guidance. It's really, when I find this stuff out, it just reconfirms my path was true, was correct, and there's a thing that needs to be done in history, whether or not I understood it coming through this place. I'm starting to see it now. It's consistent with everybody that ever looked into a stinking in business that we got to fix this, and how are we going to go about it? And the Declaration of Independence, I'm not such a patriotic guy somehow in this when I see the usurpation and none of my so-called fellow countrymen step up. There's no patriotism in that. But there's certain principles that underpin how we move through despite ourselves. And again, the Declaration of Independence, not in word, but in the process, the deed that was followed, these steps taken, is instructive. They were the steps of alter and abolish. It's interesting that the question came up. It's never really come up in the chat until this morning, and I'm talking about it today. So this is if you will, the providential type synchronicity, if you will, of how people think week to week, day to day, and how we all can come together eventually, hopefully. But to alter and abolish the tyrant called government was right in that Declaration of Independence. They went through a certain properly. They did properly begin the process, what's called interposition, with a peaceful remonstrance. And that's a funny word, but all it essentially means, depending on where you're using it, it's just an objection. But it's a formal word of international notoriety. I see notoriety not like celebrity. No, it's known. And so we are at the gate of that. We're not, people that have a reserved right to do this don't have to go anywhere, actually. What we do have to do is come together right now. How's that for rock and roll, Grimner? I hope you listen to Grimner for hours before the broadcast. Well, he just does blues, rock and roll, all kinds of stuff. Listen to for your listening pleasure as you roll up your sleeves to get behind the woodshed. But there is a formal, acknowledged process to work through all this that we, the people, are going to have to start understanding. And I say you all must do this, but that's only if you intend to live under. If you don't, and you want to live under a tyrant in every face that you meet from now on. And that's only once you escape from your lockdown home prison cell, right? So I say you must do it, but I guess you don't have to, but you're admitting to the prison. You're admitting to that. And at some point, I'm not sure what we talk about anymore when we talk about things like being free or even freedom, even a little bit of liberty, that inalienable political right. What is that? When it's constructed out of your control, where you have every black and white authority to assert it. And we have the ultimate reservation. I'm not liking that. But it's not you go to guns. And it's not that you just keep vociferating you're going to go to the Second Amendment. There's a process. And you realize you go through the process. And you're going to come to a point where they did have to go to guns. But it wasn't at their instance. It was in defense of themselves. And until you make that record, you're just considered internationally another outlaw. And that reflects inside as you're just another outlaw. And you're watching how they create extremists out of everybody to make it look like everyone's an outlaw. And that's going to tamp down the enthusiasm, I can tell you right now. It's done. It's being done for that purpose. I'm not saying I'm saying we try to avoid the ultimate action, which the Second Amendment symbolizes, if nothing else. But we have a process. We're right there now, it seems to me. How we get together, again, Virginia couldn't do it. When they had it all going is really, I'm not sure. I don't know how this pulls together. But we can do it that quick. We have guidance in black and white. We don't make it up. Not our opinion. We just don't try to be the guy with the big wisdom, head and wisdom and knowledge and ego. This is a serious problem. They're moving unity into unity government into your town quickly. This is not the Republic. So there is a way to do this, and there's the way to do this wrong. And there's not going to be a public outcry. This is for everyone that's interested and concerned and wants to step up, because the rest won't. It didn't. If you notice, a few people do this stuff, and we're told that all the time. There is only you. There's only your decision to tolerate what you'll tolerate. And if you tolerate too much now, you might as well just stop talking about any kind of idea of being free or being able to have a say or not being controlled by the pocketbook they may or may not give you. So the tyranny is here. Unity is upon us. What I told you the Pope was pressing in 2015 is now in the gates. It's been in the gates. You've had a whole system of people that have been going on for decades building this up. Cancer inside that no one threw off. And so to me, in my dismay, and I don't know what the answers are, and I don't know what to do more, and there's no one that really communicates that well to do it. And my experience, as I was talking this morning, my experience with working with people, in particular, I got in a mining forum of all places. You think that a bunch of people that have something to property protect would get together to defend themselves. And do you know that there was more infighting in there than I could stomach? I don't participate now in those forums. Just don't do it. Is a reflection of the experience of this nation. But like I said, it's in the ignorance or the apathy. We have a decision to make, each one of us. So What is your choice? Choose ye this day, or forever hold your peace. Literally. Because there won't be any peace to bear, folks. What else can I say? When there is no actual objective law, you have no peace. And they're taking, the criminalcrat is going bureaucratic on you. And that's not law. It's as law. Like as money. It's not real. It's made up. It's in a surrogate jurisdiction. And everybody seems to be favorable to continuing it. So, in the theme of Ezekiel 12:2, eyes to see, ears to hear. Choose ye this day, folks. It's not something you can put off, really. I see lots of people doing that, and I'm just here to advocate against waiting, tarry not long, and move into what you want to do. Kevin Arsenault, he's on the path, folks. I hope that he understands the problem with the fraud, and I hope he does it that way, or adds this to the point, focuses down what he has to do, and becomes a help to the people in Kunukistan to free themselves. And he's asking for that. He's going to hope that his writings, he's going to do multiple series for this, he hopes that his writings will help to aid in doing that for people. So, the connections have to be made. And I guess I have to go contrary to Grimner's broadcast in Circle. It's not all connected, at least where we need it. And we've got the infrastructure, but we're not actually pulling that together. But so moving on here, I was going to read a little bit about his trickle-down treachery and these eyes to see. You can do that. You can get the link later. I need to move in through a lot of things. Again, overachiever on all these tabs every week now. There's so much to cover. So much to try and expose, and I'm just trying to get people invigorated to try and see how to protect themselves at one hand because it's on them in the streets, but also then to move out to a greater, if you will, the greater action to stop the attack. You have to stop if you can stop the attack, you won't have to do all this minor stuff, not minor, minor, not little one either, the other minor stuff. And so we have breaking right as we come to broadcast. Catastrophically wrong. If you don't see, you can step in. Kevin Arsenault can step into this and understand this is not coming out of the United States, the beacon of freedom anymore. This is all coming from somewhere else. Catastrophically wrong. German court declares regional lockdown unconstitutional in politically explosive decision. As I found it on RT, the German district court has declared a strict lockdown imposed by the government of the central state of Thuringia. Pretty cool name for Star Trek. Anyway, last spring, unconstitutional, and it acquitted a person accused of violating it. A trivial case about a man violating strict German lockdown rules, but by celebrating a birthday with his friends, has ended up in a decision the German media described as politically explosive. A district court in the city of Weimar, folks. More signals. Weimar did not just acquit the defendant, but also stated that the authorities themselves breached Germany's basic law. And I just like, wow, someone recognizes their organic law. Are you kidding me? At any rate, they do in Germany apparently. And here's what our connections are here, folks. You have to understand very carefully what we're being shown here, and I think I can relate it over really easily. Easily, Vince. And this title said German court declares. That's a clue. We're probably moving in through a declaration that you need to get for yourself. And as a new research I'm doing to qualify all other writs, all other actions to confine us down to the most efficacious and the one that we'll have the least fight on. And when they say declares, understand you have a remedy of declaratory judgment. That's rights to you as something relates to you or affects you. So here we have as the title says, this was actually on a court case, a criminal court case. But their order becomes this declaration. Thuringia's spring lockdown was, quote, catastrophically wrong political decision with dramatic consequences for almost all areas of people's lives. close quote, the court said, justifying its decision. It particularly condemned a restriction limiting private gatherings to members of one household and one person outside of it. It was this regulation that a local man violated by regulation now, folks. This is not law. Regulation that local man violated by hosting a party attended by 7 friends. Yet the judge said that the regional government itself violated the, quote, inviolably guaranteed human dignity, close quote, secured by Article 1 of the German Basic Law in the first place by imposing such restrictions. If you think these folks in administrative positions are sovereign. No, it's not their sovereign, they're subject. They tell you they're sovereign. The courts have allowed in the United States that they're sovereign and presumed within, as we find out the terminology now, is vested officials with authority. And they're not. This is what the bar member judges are allowing with no evidence. Anyway, here we have the court declaring in a criminal case that it violates an organic provision of human dignity. Do we even have that in the United States? Well, if we don't, maybe we missed. If you can take out from what you find in your state constitutions this human dignity, this animal dignity, which apparently is pretty high on the list over there, then you are shown that you can have a declaration made. You don't have to go through a criminal case, it looks like to me. You can have a direct declaration that that's forceful and enough to nullify the force and effect of these types of regulations. The lockdown imposed in Thuringia represented, quote, the most comprehensive and far-reaching restrictions on fundamental rights in the history of the Federal Republic. The court said, while calling the measures an attack on the, quote, foundations of our society, close quote, that was disproportionate. And there's another clue of caution. Well, I should explain it before I move on. The disproportionate part is here the problem. They're allowing the prerogative authority to be wielded in absence of, and have not identified that it's a fraud that purports to give it force and effect. And the disproportionate part word here agrees they have the power to make regulations when the court missed the fact that it couldn't be a fraud cannot be disproportionately or even proportionately regulated. So, word of caution notwithstanding this declaration in Germany. And here's the other condition. The decision, however, only has an effect on the specific case, which saw the defendant acquitted and freed from the need to pay a fine, $243 US, 200 euro. You watch your United States government FRN going down the tubes here. When it comes to any broader considerations, the ruling is not legally binding, although each government court can pass a judgment on the constitutionality of the orders issued by an authority other than the Bundestag and the Landtag, a regional parliament. There is the confirmation that they could use the word declare in the title. And this starts focusing our attention a little bit. I'm just offering these things not as the path, as a potential path. Everybody I'm dealing with, everybody has their path they have to decide to do. And anybody that will continue to work for that path, whatever they decide, I'll try to guide what it could be. You have to make that choice, and I'll help you as I can, as I understand a certain thing to be ability to move forward. And that's all I can really offer. And then at that point, helping quite a few people, it's starting to tax what I can do, why we need more people that understand how to go about doing this. And each one of you can do this. It's not really that hard. You just need to know a couple of things. Here is the breaking news that even the underneath the mitigation, it breaches fundamental rights. In a way, that's all you need to show, right? Now, we've also got information that they won't recognize that harm, but that's okay. That's something that we have to figure out how to lock in and embarrass the system for not doing so, I suppose, not having a better thought in my mind while I'm doing the broadcast. But here we have it, folks. It's breaches fundamental human rights, these mitigation measures that are disproportionate.
attack the foundations of society. Unity attacks the foundation of society. Climate change attacks the foundations of society. Right? And you're going to hear this again coming up with people that thought that they were kumbaya with all this. Women, indigenous, and children. Unholy alliance. Okay, so there's insights. Not coming out of the beacon of freedom. No, it's coming elsewhere. Another federal republic. So if we can shove back a little bit and say, well, our United States was at least equal to the German Federal Republic. Don't we have at least equal rights? That this would apply? And having to say that, didn't I just say that whoever was the officials in the country have breached their trust to keep the republic that the posterity was to enjoy and be secured to, that we're having to reference to a lesser federal republic constitution? And I hear crickets. Anyway, gonna better stop. I can't think about that. It really starts to irritate me a bit. Let's move on a little bit now. Okay, so that's the real cool news. That was really neat. Thank you, Kevin Arsenault. I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but thank you for your efforts and your clear thinking. Again, I depart a little bit, but nothing. We're standing shoulder to shoulder. You're seeing what I've seen. You've come to it, and now we need more people. You're right. So let's hope we can. You up in Kanukistan, can contact him and see how you're going to best work through your laws and how you're best going to move through. But moving through this unity government, the overthrow, what happens to you when you're on the wrong side of the unity inclusion committee? A Florida bank says it closed Trump's account. A Florida bank announced Thursday that it has closed down former President Trump's account, joining a growing list of entities that have cut ties with the former president following the deadly January 6th Capitol riot as an excuse. Now, you have to understand this is the money interest going after somebody with money and making it tough. If you don't understand, there's a dynamic and a consequence of our actions. Everybody's going to feel it. Deutsche Bank, signature bank cutting ties with Trump after riots. The excuse. There was no riot there. The fact that the truth is coming out, that was not actually a riot. It actually might have been fomented. Well, it doesn't matter. These banks, these criminals, are going to go after a former president. This is pretty audacious. And to, again, show you that you start seeing the truth. You speak out, you can expect to be hammered. You sign the Declaration of Independence, you can expect to have your stuff taken eventually, notwithstanding winning the so-called war. And don't forget the Treaty of Peace that was back in there, too. That's a whole other discussion. Anyway, moving to this. My interest on this was, I told you before, 25,000 plus troops and only 2,000 participants in the inauguration showed us the military consequence we also are under. And I was wondering what the number was. The number was 26 plus thousand troops. National Guard troops came to D.C. and protected the inauguration without incident. Now the drawdown begins. And yet they have a problem with that drawdown now. But is it? Congressional inaugural, they're going to make now an excuse for Biden not having anybody show up around him to celebrate. The Congressional Inaugural Committee announces attendance will be limited for Biden's inauguration. They claimed COVID was the reason. And is it? No, it's an excuse. And I told you they were going to use it at every turn. While that's happening, they're cleaning up this unity government coming in to strip the republic of its finality. We see the media that was beating down on Trump now going around where they beat on Kamala Harris and Biden. Now they're changing the memory hole, if you will, trying to extract stories that made her look bad. The Washington Post tried to memory hole Kamala Harris's bad joke about inmates begging for food and water. These people have no sense. And yet the Post now, the media is trying to cover up the cat turd in the litter box. And they got caught. So now they've restored part of the story, and they're saying, oh, we can give you the link. They are redirecting away from seeing the truth of things. Just like they're covering why no one showed up to the inauguration and blaming it on COVID. That didn't stop the riot people, did it? Hundreds of thousands of people just the week before. You see problems with the way this thing is all working out? You see the problems. You know them when you see them, folks. I don't even have to explain it anymore. I just know it isn't right. We're going to have to find the core of it. Do I care about what's happening in Washington right now? No, actually not. I'm being more and more focused locally. But we have to understand the dynamic of what they're pushing in is over the nation. As we see Biden, again in the news, quickly, I'm just going to go through these quickly, issues a slew of executive actions on day one. And I gave you a couple links here. I won't even touch more than these. You can read them. Some are better stated than others. That's why I have a number of links, 2 or 3 links here. And they explain all that they did. And they talk about he came in and he enacts face mask mandate. He strikes down Trump policies on immigration and climate change. And he actually strikes out the Keystone Project, which a lot of people would go, yay, but that's not the point. You're looking at what? Now the Utah Indians are going to come up here in this next couple tabs. They know this was an attack. They were adversely affected by this. The indigenous are being attacked by this very same climate change policy, which is a fraud, just like COVID, to bring in unity government, not enforce and reinforce a Republican tripartite government. And we have just, again, I'm not going to read it. You got the links. You can go find this stuff. I'm bringing up in context of the consequence of what I suggested was going to happen is happening. They have a freight train running, folks, and I don't know really what to do to stop it when there's so many people that would rather either remain ignorant, and if they're not ignorant, remain apathetic, and or whatever. Not even come up with your own stuff and watch this stuff come on. Even when you agree with the, or at least you thought you were agreeing with the occupier, they'll cut your throat in a heartbeat when it serves them. Utah Governor Mitt Romney rail against Joe Biden's energy lease freeze. So not only was the Keystone killed, the energy leases for oil were frozen. Why? Carbon, climate change. He reinstituted the Paris Accord. He reinstitutes the unholy alliance of the WHO, not the rock group and the rock. Ow, this is not entertainment, folks. This is not pretty nature. This is the criminocrats at the WHO driving the hierarchy of this COVID as fraud. Utah Governor Spencer Cox and Senator Mitt Romney have signed a joint letter criticizing the Biden administration moratorium on new federal oil and gas permits, arguing that the energy policy was arbitrary and damaging business. Let's move on to who we start to see gets damaged. Buyer's remorse, a title. Ute Indian tribe lashes out at Biden administration for restricting federal energy development. Quote, direct attack on our economy and sovereignty. Close quote. Oh, now the Indian tribe gets it. What I was talking to you all about DAPL, the Dakota pipeline, now they're seeing it's a direct attack on the economy. Oh, when it affects your pocketbook, you start whimpering. Oh, that's what the government did to keep you quiet. Paid you. They bribed you with $1,200. Oh, we're going to give you $2,000. It doesn't keep up with anything. It actually institutes universal unity basic income, but that's okay. We're bribed. We can get away with it. The Ute Indian tribe was directly, immediately affected by a climate change policy. They know exactly it's a direct attack on the economy and the sovereignty. Where's all that 26,000 National Guard protecting this, folks? Where are the generals looking at the overthrow? It's all hidden underneath the plausibly lawful right of the president to do so. And this is the problem of political parties giving themselves license to be licensable. They just license their tyranny, and no one stops it. It doesn't stop there. This is on and on. This is all happening in the first day or so. And I told you about this reprieve. It was coming back with a vengeance. Now they're talking about your production. They're talking about your minerals. They're talking about the energy that you need. What is that going to eventually do? They curtail it so much, and your prices are going up to live more. Why? Because they're going to drive your austerity. You think that $1,200 check's going to mean much?
It probably already doesn't, but somehow you think it does. And then you didn't understand that you had to hook up to a liability in order to get that money. I just found out more about this on the tax side. Fascinating to me. People talk about being separated from the government, but then you tie in to get whatever. I don't get that. And what is it? It's a deflating, values deflating in this thing, and they want to tie you into the system, and you're gonna get the things they want. In fact, it came out they're advocating, like I told you they would, that you won't get paid unless now you get that little jab. It's not a vaccine, folks. It's a biological weapon. We got a link here at the end of this for you later. The doctor's coming out to identify that for you. Used to work in the military. So the military is the focus here. We get to give all of our knowledge, and we see here the Ute Indian tribe saying they understand this is an economic attack and a sovereignty attack. That's what unity does. That's what sustainable development is to do. It's completely contrary to organic law. It's adjunct policy being allowed by domestic enemies in offices of government is your life. It doesn't stop at all this week. It's ongoing. And this regurgitates what Vilsack, who was in the USDA, I told you at the time, he went to the Midwest, he went to the breadbasket, and he told those farmers, you're politically inert. We're not listening to you no more. He's back with a vengeance. USDA signs MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, with Rockefeller's Council of Foundations to exploit rural America. I don't know if everybody picks it up, and the importance, Biden actually mentioned within the unity context, this idea of the rural and the urban getting together is the battle we fight at the Jefferson Mining District relative to university system. One Oregon, one Nevada, one health, one this and one that, is this condition. On Fridays, Agricultural Secretary Tom Vilsack announced the USDA has signed an agreement with the Council of Foundations, quote, to provide new sources of capital, new job opportunities, workforce investment strategies, close quote, and last on the list, but the heart of it, identification of additional resources. For what? For they can control it, not to give it out. We just heard someone sent me a notice, I think it was last night. Oregon governor is going to be given the power to control your life. They're now stepped down into controlling production under an emergency. They absolutely, every aspect of your life now is going to be essentially going to be, if this passes, going to be handed to a criminal in chief in every state. They're working it through. The pioneer police state is Oregon. They're working it through right now. They claim these emergencies that you don't stop, that you tolerate. They're going to come in and control everything. It even says they can seize private property. Now, those of us that know how to do this may not ever be recognized by the corrupt bar, but those that understand terminology, if you look carefully, they say real and private property. How they get to private, I don't know, but real property is not your patented land either. Real property is property held less than fee simple, and that's defined in that state. So they're only talking about essentially lease land or corporate land, if you look carefully. Because people are ignorant of this, they don't understand they're not supposed to be subject to all this either. And all that the government can take on is the tertiary economy, economic development, things that they have control of, that live by license, that exist by license of the state. They're not supposed to reach down and touch the production. And yet underneath the feigned color of a crisis that no one challenges, they're going to now control your life. If you thought what I was telling you before, it's all coming in time. It's all coming subsequent to Trump. The group will work with Obama's newly created Rural Council, which Vilsack also chairs, to implement UN Agenda 21, a 300-page, 40-chapter soft law policy. Soft law, it's not law, it's adjunct policy. They get it if they can get away with it. A policy that came out of the UN Conference of Environment and Development in Brazil, 1992. Enough said, if you're interested in this stuff, how it's developing, here's the link. I'm telling you, this was coming. Here it is. It's on steroids moving now. They're not going to even hesitate. Biden even said so. Why wait? Why wait? Biden will use the Defense Production Act in his anti-coronavirus effort. Why? But anyway, here it is. They're coming in now. He said that it could. He also admitted he can't fix it. He criticized Trump for not fixing it. And then he comes out and says he can't fix it either. Why? Because it's endless emerging diseases, and he knows that. It's made up. As long as you can continue to be quiet and you continue to agree and continue to tolerate and take it on and allow it to happen, this is coming on you. President Joe Biden will use the Defense Production Act to boost production of vaccine testing and personnel equipment to help ensure the U.S. will have enough vaccine, bioweapons, the testing and protective equipment to withstand the coronavirus pandemic. A fraud. They're coming out. This is an attack against America. This is an economic attack against America. They're going to attack you in your health, just like I told you. And now, again, I don't know what else to say. It's a freight train rolling. It's on steroids. Until people learn about this and understand how to engage this thing, this is coming on, and we understand the military is a part of it. I told you this before. So did all this, what is the effect of, you have a bunch of these 26,000 National Guard showed up. They all died from COVID, right? Because it's so dangerous. Well, we got the report. They actually did get COVID. Nearly 200 National Guardsmen sent to D.C. contract COVID. So what was the numbers? Well, 200 out of 26,000 plus, it's what, at 0.008 or something? 0.8%? Doesn't sound like much of an epidemic, does it? Oh, no, but we're going to make a big deal about it. We're going to order masks on federal land, no less. It's going to be interesting for all y'all that understand federal land. Your roads and highways were disposed. They're not federal land. Your mining claims and your ranches and stuff are not federal land. So as long as you, even with this imposed upon you, if you stay on the public disposed highways down to the trail and you stay on your land, it's not federal land. But I found interesting they called it federal land. That's a titled thing. It's not public land. They're talking about titled land. And so when you understand title and you get back to the law of your land, I think we're going to have another level of protection. But anyway, get back to COVID. Yeah, National Guard contracted COVID. They must have all died. Nope, only 200. That kind of messed them all up. But there was no need for it. Did the masks help? Absolutely not. Nothing helped, did it? Because it's the wrong thing. But here we have in the news, and the alternatives to the mask, alternatives to what is not a vaccine, bioweapons, Miraculous, Ivermectin approved for use in the U.S. for treatment of COVID-19. In actuality, the group that looks at this stuff removed its restriction and claimed it had no opinion on the use. And what that has the effect of is giving the doctors a freedom to go ahead and use it. And this was in the news a couple months ago. And it's not, I guess, you have to look very carefully. I didn't have the time to pull it together. It's not just ivermectin in the prophylactic use. There's two other components. One, I think, starts with a D, and I don't remember the name, or just a glance, and I forgot to fix it, and possibly zinc, or if not vitamin D, but I can't remember as well. Go check it out. It's a prophylactic use. It's kind of like hydroxychloroquine, but this is a little bit more agreed to now. The organization, as aided by Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance, said that the National Institute of Health upgraded the recommendation for the, quote, miraculous drug ivermectin, making it an option to use with treating COVID within the United States. Why doesn't the President Trump's replacement Biden bringing unity, unifying care, and bringing ivermectin instead of masks that don't work? Why? Why care about the federal lands? Is the trees going to get sick, folks? Do they know that COVID-19 is hiding behind a tree in a bush? No, this has nothing to do with anything. It's a political takedown. The Ute Indians tell us it's an economic attack, just like I've been telling you it would be. Do I say it because look at what I said? No, folks, we're in trouble. We're in some real, real trouble. It was a lie. Biden linked WHO advisor says COVID-19, quote, likely
leaked from Wuhan lab. So here we have this story now coming out just in time to try and focus this story, another story, on top of trying to focus you on an origination for COVID. In other words, they still believe it's real, and they're not going to let you forget it. It's only likely leaked. Read the story, you'll see all the hesitation. Nothing certain here. And all this story is to get you to continue to believe COVID-19 is something. They'll tell you everything that they've been doing is just repeated just in time for Biden to implement these unity nonsenses, of which COVID is part, climate change is part. Peace treaty, the Paris Accords are a part. The pipeline to take away your fuels that you need in your country is a part. All part of the destruction attack on the United States, trying to blame China. As I've told you, your local officials had the ability to stop this. You don't care what the Chinese told you, but they want you to think it's real and that it's something, and we can blame the Chinese so that we can say, oh, we have something to fight. Also right on cue for Biden, WHO admits high cycle PCR tests produce COVID false positives. I told you this would be coming. Why? Because they have to try and show how they're going to, their so-called vaccine, this bioweapon actually works so that it can't detect that you have it. It's all here, folks. This is the war against us. Right on cue. Exactly. Were the conspiracy theorists just proven right about the fake rescue plan for COVID-19? Well, that's actually an improper statement. COVID-19 is a common cold. COVID, he says. COVID is just a common cold. COVID-19 is not even messaged here. Fake rescue plan? For what? For the common cold? So the question even here, the conspiracy theorists proven right, well, it has nothing to do with conspiracy theorists. It has nothing to do with a rescue plan for the common cold. But it's true. The people that were exposing this to be a fraud, yes. And so the problem I have with some of these stories is that they commingle a lot of things that if we get straightened out, we might have a better direct angle at talking about some of this for people. Did science deniers just get confirmed that it was political after all? Well, how they changed that doesn't prove politics. What they do show is that they were giving you the wrong tests before to boost up their attack, and now they're going to produce the fact that their bioweapon is working. Again, a cover for what the real damage is as they take you out, each one of you that will accept it. EU goes ahead with on this point. EU goes ahead for eating worms. This is another part of that agenda. You will not eat meat. You will not have meat. It's a violation of climate change and sustainability. The EU has officially approved the sale of worms as food to be consumed by humans. The announcement was made Wednesday by the EU's Food Safety Agency. The punchline to come, folks, specifically states that dried mealworms, the larvae of beetle. I was asking about that this morning, wasn't I? Beetle in the chat room, RLM chat. Are the safe for humans, you animals, to eat, despite the fact, Food Safety Agency, despite the fact that the report also noted that, quote, allergic reactions are likely to occur. If you think these people mean you any good, vaccine likely to cause adverse reactions, but it's okay. So we see a consistency between they don't care, they adjust they change the bar, they move the goalposts, you allow it, and they're exposing their game plan if you just look at it and how you can stop it. Completely arbitrary and capricious on the start. And these people are the supposedly appropriate medical experts. The same people over there in the EU that's going to force you, even though they could have allergic reactions. And if people die from peanuts anymore, folks, don't underestimate the power of this problem. That the EU is in on it, folks, if we didn't know before. And the EU also says that EU gives initial backing for vaccine passports. Now, I don't know what port you're passing inside your countries, but they're going to do a vaccine passport, as we were telling you would happen, as they told us. I didn't prophesy none of this. This is all written in the plans. I've been talking about it for years. Coronavirus vaccine passports could soon be recognized across the EU as leaders give initial
initial backing ahead of a summit this week. Brussels said, Brussels sprouts. Brussels, why don't you just eat the Brussels sprouts? Forget the vaccine. It said that the passports to allow greater travel and tourism, that travel and tourism is another sustainable goal to defeat your production and defeat everything you're doing in your nature and the things that your society needs. In a bloc that was currently premature, had hinted that plans would be picked up in the future. Tomorrow. So on and on. They're agreeing with the medical vaccine passport to the fraud. Why? They want the technocrats, the criminalcrats want the control to track you around. But listen to this one, folks. This is where you got to read down just a little bit ways, and you find out, however, based on this passport, remember, this is not the beacon of freedom, United States, that's doing this either. The Department of Health said that there was no plans to introduce the vaccine passports in the UK amid fears the bioweapons, they say vaccine here, but the bioweapons may not prevent people from carrying the disease and spreading it around the world. Not fears, folks. Fact. You become transmissible of the synthetic thing they've created and stuck in your body that's now making you private property for a company, which ends up kind of creepily coming. If I get to this thing here in a bit, if we get to the end of the tabs, it's going to sound real creepy real quick about owning you. A fake PCR test. John Rappaport again goes through to explain how he's explained to you that they're blowing their cover. They've had to adjust. The WHO came back and adjusted. They did it over SARS-CoV-2. That's a fraud. All this is a fraud, and they're doing it for what he says is two reasons. Huge numbers of people have caught onto the PCR test scam, and by their correction, the WHO paves the way for declining COVID number of cases, thereby making it appear the new bioweapon called the vaccine is a roaring success. He says, I predicted this development. Yes, he did. I did as well. We're independent. Well, again, looking in the same stinking abyss, reading the same information, or even consistent information, you're going to come to the same understanding. A brief review. Well, I won't get into all that, and I don't know if I want to get to the second one he talked. Excuse me, I'm looking for the second one. Anyway, you can read the article. He exposes that they have blown their cover. Well, okay, great. It's now use it for something. This is now a shifting. Now, if you apply this truth, if you will, the PCR is still a lie because it can't do any of that testing, but you show that they did it in a weird way. You got to read how they changed the words so that they telegraphed to the testing labs how to use the reagents I told you about were so important, how to use those so that the test becomes out more favorable, more accurate, agreeing then that the prior tests were inaccurate and the cycle times were too much to find anything. And it will. You knock them down, knock those cycles down, it's not duplicating the RNA-DNA hybrid sufficiently to be able to see it in the test. So all this unity is not for you, is not kumbaya, it's to bring in these, it's a military operation, an attack on your economy, an attack on your way of life. 1 hour after Biden inaugurated, the WHO changes COVID testing criteria. How convenient. No, they blame Trump. They give him a hard time. When Biden comes in, the players behind the scenes, the ones that Trump didn't get, the swamp that never got cleaned, is still running. Immediately. 1 hour. Some part of me feels pretty good about being able to tell you that it's going to happen this fast, but I'm terrorized that it's happening this fast. It's here, folks. I don't know what more to say. I said it before. In what some have suggested is politicized timing, the World Health Organization on Wednesday changed the protocol for the COVID-19 tests, which will result in large reductions in the number of positive cases. The body took this action just 1 hour after Joe Biden was sworn in president. We'll read more. You can find it. I got the article for that. I got their WHO document, and this is how they change the words. You need to read to see how they do this to adjust. If you're not technically minded, it may pass right by you. Has to do with what they're instructing the people doing the tests on how to do it. It's discussing the nucleic acid testing technologies that use polymerase chain reaction for detection of SARS-CoV-2. They don't have an isolate. They have some throat swabs from some guy on a airplane from a jet in Washington. That's it. The PCR. You notice I told you the PCR variants are all included. That is the nucleic acid testing technologies. So they tell you right here, it includes all of that I've been telling you, that all the tests that they have are combined. They've been doing the tests wrong. Now they're going to do the test a different way, and they're going to claim it doesn't show anything, and it never did. The trick. It was never what? There was never a pea in the cup, folks. The three cups moving around, the magician moving the cups around. There was, you pick one. Where's the pea? Where's the pea? There's no pea in the cup, folks. How are they doing it? California keeps key virus data out of public sight. You think the government is public for you? No, the public means them. And it keeps key virus data. They claim it's to help you. No, people are realizing, no, we want information. This is how they're doing it. The governor is allowing this. This is the one he's covering for his fraud. They have no information that proves anything. The numbers are cooked. The numbers are really irrelevant. But they tell you something, just like the court case. They tell you that they are focused on being able to show that the hospitals are overwhelmed. That was the key. That's what this story backs up their focus. The story of the court case that the judge focused on that about the restaurants. Remember, he still allowed the outdoor restaurant touring. He made the comment, nothing is relevant more and only to the fact of the overwhelming public facilities to do health. And I said, folks, change your focus. The Prince Edward Island, Kevin Arsenault, has a perfect case for that. They have 0 hospital cases, and so we now hearken back over to Germany, the Federal Republic there. How come they can identify this pretty quickly, and even real quickly after 9, 10 months, 12 months now? But little Prince Edward Island bureaucrats, criminocrats can't. Tip of the iceberg, thousands of COVID vaccinations, vaccine injuries, and 13 U.S. deaths reported in December alone, when the United States Food and Drug Administration gave Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna permission to distribute their experimental mRNA bioweapon. The Americans didn't say bioweapon. It says coronavirus vaccine. That's not SARS-CoV-2. They tell you that there's other truths that I don't even talk to you. I just said that one. This is a bioweapon. They're covering it. It's a cover. It's a color of law, a color of authority under a coronavirus vaccine that they can't do. You can't do a vaccine against the common cold or seasonal influenza. That's why it's not novel. Anyway, so the mRNA is not a vaccine, and they don't advertise it as one. It doesn't even mitigate the symptoms. It actually causes them. That alone defeats that use right there. Anyway, to this mRNA experimental mRNA, experimental, how many times are we going to say that? Experimental you're doing to yourself, folks. To Americans on an emergency use, an emergency basis. In December, it opened the floodgates for other countries to quickly follow suit. Tip of the iceberg, injuries. Could be. How are we going to know? Only some respond to the AERS system, right? U.S. life expectancy, the consequence. The attack is not just on your economy and everything else. It's on you. Life expectancy sees biggest drop in decade after COVID-19 if you believe COVID is something, and you believe the same people that brought you Event 21 are telling you anything. The people that are part of the university system are telling you anything. That based on this fraud, they're now expecting life expectancy shortens because of it. Is what? Is evidence, even by these people, that the mitigation measures were not saving people. They're not helping people. They're not working. They're killing people. And it's a long-term process. Just like the vaccine is predicting into the bioweapon that they're calling a vaccine. 900,000 U.S. deaths expected to result from unemployment during the pandemic. New economic study finds an attack on your economy. However, this is again the same people that are bringing you COVID-19 Event 21 dark winter. The paper research from Harvard University, Johns Hopkins University, and Duke University, talk about an UN Holy Alliance, and concluded that a staggering 890,000 additional deaths may result over the next 15 years stemming from actions taken to mitigate the spread of the virus. And so they try to sell you into the fact that COVID-19 exists, that SARS-CoV-2 exists, like they can test for it. These are the same people that cook the books, that Michael Mann cooked the books for climate change, that I remember all the names, the university back in England, he started the whole thing. These are all the same people. If you want to believe this information, you can get into this and you can lower your energy and you can be defeated by it, or you can say, this is it, I'm stopped, done. My choice today is to stop this nonsense. Do I have to stop them? No. I just have to stop locally how it interferes with me and those hopefully around you if you get a little bit into it. More casualties due to this beneficial and safe so-called vaccine. Home run king Hank Aaron dies of undisclosed cause 18 days after receiving Moderna vaccine. The 86-year-old sports icon received the first of 2 doses of Moderna's vaccine on January 5th in an attempt to inspire other black Americans to step up to the plate and get the vaccine. He's dead. Oh, it had nothing to do with it. It had nothing to do with it. Gentleman looked pretty healthy to me. I was pretty surprised. I didn't realize he was still kicking around, but there he was, dead 18 days after the jab. And he happens to be black, and we know that the record shows that, can I say ethnic people, people of color, all of y'all folks, the black people, we so-called, the Hispanic people, so-called, these are just invented race names as well. They are focused, attacked by this stuff. They've done the reports. It's not fear-mongering. So go ahead and keep trusting those people that want to bring unity. It has nothing to do. You're expendable, absolutely expendable to the agenda. And now I'm moving into those videos. I'll just give you links for them. I think they're information you need to hear. It helps to have other authorities talk than you hear me behind the woodshed just pointing this stuff out. I think it's important to hear people speak. You can watch, especially the videos are good. You can hear and see how they're responding. They help to solidify the information, more of fact than a question. It certainly gives you information to go research yourself if you need more. And I don't say that to say don't go study. You really need to keep up with how they're shifting the goalposts all the time. But here's a couple of videos here I'm going to give you links for. Dr. Simone Gold. This is one of those doctors in the front line that got nailed, taken down. She's still talking. The Truth About the CV-19 Vaccine is a title. She'll explain her latest interactions. She also says that she's helping. She said, I didn't know this, but she's an attorney. I'm debating on contacting her maybe to see how she's approaching that lawsuit to help defend a doctor in Oregon, the Pioneer Police State, Oregon, help a doctor who got his license pulled without any hearing more than the medical board yanking his license to care for people because he spoke out leaving the vaccine as a question to people for people to decide and being one to give information and one providing alternative known remedies that work. So I found out Dr. Simone Gold is also somewhat of an attorney, I guess she says, and she's a doctor. And what I notice is both those professions are missing the point, which is part of why I want to talk, maybe see if she'll communicate with me and see where they are with that. And in return, I get to hear where her mind is about that, maybe. Again, so much overwhelming things to do that, and then a lot of times people don't want to really interact. So, like, who's the guy behind the woodshed? If they don't know me behind the woodshed, but who are you if you're not a papered, pedigree type of thing? Next video, Dr. Lee Merritt, Biowarfare and Weaponization of Medicine Amid COVID, is a doctor who was involved with the military. All the M words got jammed into my mind there, and none of them would come out. But she was involved with biowarfare and the military in her experience as a doctor, a researcher, and all these other things. So she has an interesting and particular insight, which she will explain better the dynamic. Again, this is important to see what these things are about, and she'll offer a little bit of that. Urgent alert. The next one, Dr. Heinrich Feichner slams the German government. It's a killer vax, he says.
and he sees someone on their parliamentary floor. I don't know if that's right, their parliament, but anyway, he's standing there speaking to the body, the legislative body, and telling them at the very end that this thing that they've been doing is a killer vax. That this is the same country that just the government came out, the courts came out to say this is what you're doing violates our organic principles of human dignity. Now, I find that interesting that nobody else in the country, in the world, has said that, but they apparently respect that in Germany. My hat's off to that much about that. Shame on America for not coming up with it first. Now we move into the creepy stuff. I might be able to get done today with these tabs. The creepy stuff. Remember, we talked about these injections. You get GMO. Monsanto has proven through the Bar Association courts violating the trespass of people's property of their airborne special genetic seed pollen invading your land, destroying the purity of your crop, and then penalizing you for that happening by giving benefit of that adulteration to your crop to Monsanto as a theft of their property, and giving Monsanto the genetic power of possession because the genes just existed. I want to remind you with what they're doing on the mRNA is to do the very same thing with a synthetic gene setup. And I want to remind you at this point that this is information that they created out of a computer that they're telling us that they create synthetically, that they make the RNA, which is then hybridized to be the DNA hybridized DNA that they use to transcribe as an instruction set to change the DNA in each of the cells that this stuff gets into, thereby putting their private property into you for a benefit. It's no different than what Monsanto did on its technology to infect the crop of a next-door neighbor with their stuff, and Monsanto controls. It's their property. Microsoft granted patent to reanimate dead people as 3D chatbots. Microsoft granted patent to reanimate dead people as 3D chatbots. I sprung the punchline. This is now a so-called virtual. This is a computer integration of the essence of you put into what they're showing here as chatbots that are constructed synthetically to be accepting what your digital social media data says you would be like. Microsoft has been granted a patent for technology that would reanimate, in quotes, the dead by recreating them via social media posts, videos, and private messages that could even be downloaded into a 3D-like, lifelike model of the deceased. Author says, not creepy at all. I agree. The tech giant has raised the possibility of creating an AI-based chatbot that would be built upon the profile of a person, which includes their, quote, images, voice data, social media posts, electronic messages, close quote, among other types of personal information. It's understood that the chatbot would then be able to simulate human conversation through voice commands and or text chat. The patent explains that a chatbot would be a historical figure, a celebrity, a friend or relative, or even a copy of, quote, the user training the chatbot. All right, this is like going to the animatrons in Disneyland, only programmed with you in what they're claiming now is a lifelike 3D model. Yeah? Let's go back to what the Army's doing. The Army is working on Frankenbots with living tissue to better robotic capabilities. The thought of living tissue and machinery meshed together brings up images of grotesque cyborgs in far future sci-fi films, but as the Army Research Laboratory, a robot with living organic muscles may not be that far off. ARL's Combat Capabilities Development Command is teaming up with universities in North Carolina to develop studies in biohybrid robotics. This is just in a fantastical, as you might be imagining. ARL
wants to fuse living tissue with cold metal to build robots that may be able to gain the agility and versatility of living creatures. Let's go back to the idea that you've had this injection. Your DNA now has the blueprint of a proprietary property owned by the medical company that made your vaccine. Well, that's going to be interesting to get two different ones and have them have a fight over you. And then guess what you do? You die. Now, once you die, you ain't there. Legally, you're dead. Legally, you're just a hunk of meat. Legally, you're open to be doing whatever you want to do. All they have to do is say it's not abusing the corpse to say that someone owns your body. And you can already do this now for a different reason. That they come to claim your dead body. You don't have any need for it. And they come to the army and said, hey, let's make a soldier out of that dead body, utilizing his own characteristics that Microsoft has a patent for to put into this, reanimate the actual dead body. Kind of got real creepy with me real quick when I just flashed through that real quick. I said, I got to put this back together. This is where they have been telling us they've been going anyway. Well, I've talked about this death thing before, where you're dead, they can just about do anything with it. Right now, the law is that they have to have certain rituals, if you will, certain respectfulness. That can be stripped at the stroke of a pen. No different than abortion, but on the other end. They just deem you to be something else. You're not living. No, you're not living. So then they come up to the point where we can abort the baby when it's being born. That's not murder. Like, come on. Anyway, when you're dead, they don't have that problem. You're just a hunk of meat. And then Microsoft has your essence. And they reanimate your tissue. And they own you. Why? Because their DNA is in there, and that's the marker. Anyway, real creepy in my mind. I see it on the horizon. I don't know what's going to happen. Looks like maybe we want to be, if you don't want that to happen to you, maybe you want to go feed the fishes in your last gasp. But anyway, creepiness in my mind. These people are working to do all kinds of weird and creepy, freaky things. And I'm not talking about freaky's ball. This is even way beyond any of that. In the news, folks. And then they tell you in the technological side of this, you're also tied in like the Elon Musk wants to now tie you into the Ethernet of things. Again, your body's dead. They now possess it as a property. They animate it. They keep it going, whatever artificial thing. They now have all the bones and tissue and sinew they can do that they need, and they can send that robot anywhere they want, right? It has all the agility of a man that they don't have now in robots that they're trying to find. But these bodies may be now not even needed, but they would still be persons relative to a legal existence for the property side of it. And so there was going to be there would have to be an adjustment, which I think is fully within the capacity of the occupiers to do. But for us and for those things and the data control, this is the pre-control of your life before they own you as property, which we can see now starts to go in the control grid intention, where moving a little bit off of the creepiness of that into more today, but where it's going and the globalness of this, visiting bad websites will lower your credit score, says the IMF. So the money will control this, maybe through private vendors, but this is potentially the zombie apocalypse animated coming to a world near you, that your life is so constrained and copied and controlled. The money interest, the IMF, who backs up this COVID as well, and the World Bank backs up this COVID and climate change, all the same direction. This is not other than global on its execution. The attack of every peoples on the earth. A new white paper by the IMF calls for linking your search history to your financial credit score, which would in effect lower your score if you visit websites marked harmful by their fact checkers. And so this is, again, a violation in equity that you can't determine your own cause, but this is out the window. There's nothing again, fraud is as fraud does, because there's nothing to stop it. That we see the IMF has already been integrated. I told you the pivot to China was about economics and control, and they were given license to set the system up. The IMF was in part of that. I went through all of that years ago. Here's now coming out, finally rises to the top. That's in fact what the IMF has been setting up against you and setting your future life into a digital realm that you're going to be interacting with and through. Okay, so it's not a sci-fi here anymore. And all this gets worked into that digital database that gets dumped into, at this point, an reanimated model, 3D model, which appears to me extending the Monsatan condition of proprietorship to be future zombie bodies put to task. Because they're technologists, folks. That's what they do, right? And so this bad website thing got me to thinking again, I don't know where this is going. I've been putting maybe too much time into looking for, the only words I have right now are like a decentralized, federated society, if you will. The ghost in the machine I mentioned. If they can't track you, they can't do this to you. If we can become the ghost in the machine using infrastructure that's already there, this is not much different than the Matrix in a way. You're inside the Matrix, if you will, being that ghost. Now, periodically they can find you, but they can't really identify you. And if you keep moving, then they're not going to keep up with you. If you learn, and we learn to get away from those websites that they do monitor, and you go into as a ghost in the machine and become invisible but still have connection, that I think is where we want to go. That is what I've been looking to. There's some technology that's on the cusp of coming to that. I don't understand it fully. I don't have anybody to talk with about it, but for those of us that are looking for an alternative, again, getting out of the financial destruction that's coming, getting into more substantial things, you're still going to have communication. Digital, if you will, digital currency that we can trade through might be okay, but nothing on the public blockchain. And so we're going to have to come up with a whole different review getting through this technocratic conditioning. Again, the data acquisition, keeping track of you doesn't stop. You're going to have to try, and I think you're going to have to try to figure out the ghost in the machine condition. Digitally, I think it might be close to us to be able to do. But when you get out in the public, it's going to be here. We have someone standing tough. We say no to mugshots at airports and borders. Papers, please, is the title of a discussion I've had here to go talk about, where the government is putting an excuse relative to all the COVID, relative to taking your images and your pictures in the databases, that they're supposed to be focused on non-U.S. citizens, but they're focusing on everybody, expanding, again, mission creep out to gather more and more and more data, which they need when you see like something like the Microsoft type technology when they're going to animate you later. And that the USPS here is creating a national biometric criminal background check that started to be checking only employees, is the type of very fast encroachment that all the services that you need are being used to become the agents of the acquisition and imposition of the oppression. That no one talking about it, it comes on us. A few talking about it may still be able to swing it. A few guys made a Declaration of Independence the right way, and it caused a problem for someone else. That, I guess, is a possibility, but I think this is too widespread. Peoples across the world are going to have to rise up properly, give themselves a nice foundation, a great foundation, in order to act better and do better and come through with it better, with a better mentality about it. Grimmer, thank you for what you do at reallibertymedia.com. Thank you very much for everything you offer there, and everybody that syndicates. I'll be with you next week. Tech diffs or nature willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
That's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like. son. You just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.